TIFU by volunteering to research and report back to my very conservative pro-life family the cause of my grandmother's mysterious death at the age of 32. She died following an incomplete and then illegal abortion in 1958. My paternal grandmother's death in 1958 at the age of 32 has always been shrouded in mystery. Throughout the years, there have been various bits of hearsay that have led to theories and speculation of her dying of the flu, hepatitis, a heart attack, appendicitis, etc. After another recent round of speculation at a family gathering, I volunteered to take the lead in researching the exact cause of her death, if such could be determined. Further, I offered to report any findings back to all, so as to finally put the speculation and matter to rest. After some digging on Ancestry.com, I found both her and the actual copy of her death certificate, and which lists sepsis and incomplete abortion infected as the causes of death. I've checked and rechecked the information. It exactly matches her in every category: name, maiden name, DOB, location of birth, address, mother's name, father's name, date of death, city, county, state of death, etc., etc. It's 100% her. This is 100% her death certificate. I've included a link to the image of her redacted death certificate both for any who wish to see it, but also to serve as proof of the veracity of my claim and sincerity in posing my question. The problem is that my family is extremely conservative, very religious, and not unexpectedly, very, very pro-life. Needless to say, this news will no doubt be extremely upsetting to multiple generations of my immediate and extended family, and which still includes some of her living children, and my aunts and uncle. What if my telling them only further injures my grandmother's already tragic tale by sullying her memory in the minds of her living relatives? This is far and away my greatest concern. I'm not sure what to say, if anything, or how best to do so. I've sat in this information for a little more than a week, weighing my options on the best path forward. For their part, they're all understandably and anxiously waiting and wanting to know what I've found, and regularly asking me for updates. Paternal grandmother's death certificate TLDR volunteered to research and report back on exact cause of grandmother's death to very conservative pro-life family, immediate and extended, and discovered that it resulted from an incomplete and, then, illegal abortion. I've now got to figure out whether or not to say anything, and if so, what. Edit some quick info that might be helpful, by the comments. Her family. My grandfather, 4 kids, App. 17, 15, 14 and my father was 9, lived in abstract abject poverty. They'd regularly skip meals for days until they had enough money to buy more food. Because my grandfather would not accept help of any kind, my grandmother would sneak garden-grown food given to her by her sisters who lived nearby. All agree that she was very sick and suffered with a high fever for some days before she sought medical attention. Early into her illness ailment, her sister found her struggling to do laundry on one of those roll-top machines on the back porch and had to take her inside and put her to bed for fear that she was about to pass out. She stayed in bed and my grandfather prohibited anyone from entering the room, and he alone saw and spoke to her. Some believed that he limited contact out of fear that she was somehow contagious. He told the kids and her sisters that she only needed rest. On the second or third day, sometime before lunch, an ambulance was summoned to the home. This was immediately understood to be an extraordinary measure, given its cost. Only my grandfather accompanied her in the ambulance and urged no one to come to visit her once admitted to the hospital. Instead, he told the older kids to look after the younger in their absence. The sisters of my grandmother, my great-aunts, immediately came to be with the children. My father, then age 9 and the youngest child, recalls seeing them wheel his mother out of the house on a gurney, and gently waving to him as she was being placed into the rear of the ambulance. It was the last time he would see her alive. Later that night, my grandfather returned home alone and informed the family that she had died. Accounts vary, but my grandfather essentially refused to leave their bedroom for a number of days after her death, except to use the outhouse and to attend her funeral services, and which her sisters prepared and arranged, while also caring for the kids. Despite remarrying another woman less than a year later, and being married to her for 50-plus years, he never moved her clothes and shoes out of their closet, and forbid anyone else from doing so, even until his death in 2010 or so. My grandmother's death had far-reaching implications for her family, essentially fracturing it, and which causes consequences still dealt with today. My father developed a drinking problem a few years after my grandmother's passing, with such only being greatly accelerated and further exacerbated by a tour in Vietnam, and which led to his untimely death in the early 90s. In a very real sense, my children never knew their grandfather because of the tragic events that occurred with my grandmother's tragic passing. Also edited, abstract, for, abject. Update: I have requested an autopsy report from the state chief medical examiner. Will update if any such report exists, and if so, its findings. Update 2: The state chief medical examiner doesn't have records before 1975. I am contacting county coroner on Monday.